Hello everyone, welcome back to Milestone Gaming. My name is Malachi Gardner, and today I'm going to be starting my playthrough of the Warhammer Quest adventure card game. I hope you enjoy the video.
Alright everyone, let's get right into it. So this is Warhammer Quest, and I have the first scenario set up here. It's called A Foul Stench, and it is the first scenario in the campaign called An Uneasy Alliance, which is the only campaign that was ever actually released for this game, unfortunately. So, on the back of this scenario card here, we have some instructions on how to set up the scenario, and then we have some rewards and penalties for winning or losing this scenario that'll impact the campaign, and then we have some flavor text, which I'm not going to read to make sure that I don't spoil it. So, I'm just going to let you do that on your own. We have some special scenario rules here, which you should keep in mind. So it says, after Odious Grump is defeated, he flees, and the party tracks him. Place his enemy card in the Nemesis layer, then add 4 progress to the current location. So that doesn't mean anything to you right now, but we should keep that in mind so that if we ever defeat Odious Grump, we know that he's not actually defeated, he just runs away. And then some things happen. We get to place 4 progress tokens on the location. Now, what are locations? Well, locations are what we're trying to do. We're trying to explore these 4 locations. The back of this scenario sheet tells us to take 3 random ones, so I have no idea what these are, but this one is Grump's Sump. And we know this one's going to be at the bottom because the scenario sheet tells us very specifically to put this card at the bottom of the deck. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to go through each one of those and explore them. So we'll start with the first one, and it is Throng of Webs. So it is a cave type location. It is a tier 1 location. The campaign is divided up into 3 tiers, tier 1, 2, and then 3, and of course the cards in those tiers are more powerful based off of the level of the tier to keep up with what upgrades you're going to be getting for your characters. We have some flavor text here, which I'll read. Thick webs choke the area, threatening to ensnare any interlopers as easily as the flies, rats, goblins, and horses these spiders seem to feed upon. Wow, that is pleasant. So hopefully we won't join those people in there who are dead, and hopefully we'll be able to explore this location and make it out the other side. So we have some pieces of information at the bottom. This is what we're really going to be focusing on. First, we have this number right here. This is a 7, and that is the number of progress tokens that we need to place on this location. So for this one, we need to get 7 of these tokens, and there's 3 on one side and then 1 on the other. After we get 7 on there, we can go to the next location. And remember, we have 4 locations to explore. Then you have some enemy spawning. So first you have the red skull, and that is spawning enemies that are engaged with players. So we have 1 of these, and so we're going to draw the top card of the monster deck, and we are going to place this in front of the person who has the first player token, which is this cool looking torch. So we draw a cave bat, and I'm going to explain this guy in a little bit, but he's going to go right in front of our 2 characters, which I'll introduce right now. So, first character, we have the Dwarf Ironbreaker, who is kind of like a fighter type character, and then we have the Human Bright Wizard, and this card is based off of the number of players, so since we have 2 players in the game, or 2 characters, I'm playing solo, but I'm controlling 2 characters, so I use this card, and that will set your hit points, which are tracked by these tokens. The thing is, the amount of hit points you have scales with the number of characters in the game, so when you are playing a 2-player game, you have 22 health, which, when you have tokens in 1s and 3s, is quite a bit, so I like using dials from another game. This is from the Lord of the Rings card game. I'll use those to track the character's health because they're so high. The enemies also have health. This is their health right here. But as you see, this cave bat only has 1 health. And the boss for this scenario, Odious Grump, he has 6. So as you can see, you don't need as many tokens for the villains and monsters. So I use tokens for them. But for the characters who have 22 and then 26 health, that is quite a bit of tokens, and using the dials is just a little bit easier. And then we also have this special rule here that says that this hero activates twice during each hero phase, and both of them have that, and that's because we are playing with just 2 characters, you always have 4 hero actions per round. And normally when you have 4 characters, they each just take 1. If you have 3, 2 of them take 1 action, and then 1 of them takes 2 actions. And in a 2-character game, they both just take 2 actions, just to make sure that you always have 4 hero actions happening each round. Now, the second skull down here, the gray skull, this has 3, and those are enemies that are in the shadows. So those enemies are going to enter play over here, face down. So I have no idea what these are, and they will be revealed at some point when I do certain things to them, but for now, they're just going to be hidden. And then we also have a special ability here, which says at the end of the location phase, the party leader exhausts 1 action. So at the end of the round will be the location phase, and we'll have to exhaust 1 action, which of course I'll explain what that means when it is a little bit more relevant. So, that is the whole scenario setup there, and now we can get into playing the game. So, we have 2 characters. We have the Ironbreaker and then the Bright Wizard, and they each have their hit points set, and the Ironbreaker has the Torch, which is the first player token. So, he's going to take his first activation, then the Bright Wizard is going to take an activation, then the Ironbreaker is going to take a second activation, and then the Bright Wizard is going to take her second activation, which will be the 4 hero activations. Now, what we do during an activation is quite simple. You're just going to choose one of these 4 actions that your character has, and you are going to do what the card says. Each character has 4 actions, and they're all the same types. So you have 4 different types of actions, and then each character deviates a little bit from the formula. So we have attacking, which is a big deal in this game, and this guy, when the dwarf attacks, he may engage up to 2 enemies, which would allow you to take enemies from the shadows and put them in front of you, so you can fight them, and then you can attack. And when you attack, you're going to roll 2 of these white dice, and then you're going to roll 1 black die per enemy in front of you. So, since he has 1 enemy in front of him, engage with him, he's going to roll 1 black die, and then he has 2 white dice because the card tells you to roll 2 white dice. And then before this activation, you may target up to 2 enemies. So you can choose 2 enemies in front of you. So if I were to use this action here, I could engage up to 2 enemies. So I could take this enemy here, put it in front of me, and flip it over. And then I could engage a second enemy as well. And then I could choose 2 enemies that are in front of me to attack. I would roll all the dice, and then I would apply the effects. There are 3 different faces on the hero die, or 3 different symbols on the hero die, rather, and one of them is the axis there. That's a success symbol, and what successes do varies based off of which action you're performing. When you attack, successes deal damage in the form of wounds, which can be divided amongst all of the characters you've targeted. So if I had 2 enemies, I could split this 3 damage here between those 2 targets. So I'd be able to do 3 damage, and of course, you have their health there, and if I deal 1 damage to this guy, and he has 0 health remaining, then he is defeated. Now, you have 2 other faces. One face is this shield face here, and that will prevent damage. And then you also have the sun symbol here. This is like a critical hit, exploding die type thing. Now, what that means is you're going to take one of these success tokens, which just counts as a normal success, and you're going to roll it again. Now, it is possible for you to continue rolling these sides and keep on taking success tokens and dealing tons of damage. So that's really cool. And now, you may notice that I said that the shields block damage. I didn't actually mention how you get dealt damage by monsters. Well, there's 2 times that you can be dealt damage. First is during your player activation, and the second is during the enemy phase. Now, I'll get into the enemy phase later, but for your player activation, you are going to roll this die, like I've already done, and there are 2 different symbols on this. Now, there's the blank, which does nothing, but then there's this claw here. Now, for each claw symbols you roll, you're going to take the highest strength monster, and it's going to deal damage to you. So, the strength is this blue number right here, and since this is the only monster in front of me, engaged with me, this is the highest strength, which is 1. So he's going to do 1 damage to me. Now, I had originally rolled this, and this has a shield, so I get to reduce the damage dealt to me by 1. So that would do no damage. So that's how that side works. And then you also have this side right here. And when you roll this side, it is going to be the Nemesis ability, which in this case is distribute 2 wounds amongst the party. So that is what happens when you roll this, and that does change from game to game, which is kind of cool. So that is how attacking works, and the actions all work the same way, except the only thing that's different is what your successes do. So let's go through those quickly. First, you have exploring. Now, when you explore, 2 things actually happen. The first thing you do is you're going to count the number of successes that you rolled, and that is the number of these progress tokens that you're going to be able to place on the location. And again, this location needs 7 to be cleared. Also, you're going to draw the top card of this dungeon deck off to the side here, and you're going to resolve what it says. So I'm not going to look at that until I actually explore, but that's what's going to happen there. Now, when you aid someone, you're going to, again, roll the dice the card tells you to roll, and the dice for any number of monsters in front of you. For all of the successes that you get for your roll, you're going to take these success tokens, and you're going to be able to give them to another player, not yourself, and they're going to be able to take them and put them on their cards. Each card may not have any more than 2 success tokens on them at a time, and when they take that action, so suppose this character were to explore, you may spend these success tokens to gain success symbols before you actually roll. Now, before I roll, I can choose to spend 1, 2, or 0 of these tokens to gain additional successes for my roll, which is pretty cool. Aiding is very useful. And the final action is rest. Now, when you rest, same thing happens. You're just going to be rolling your dice. Now, after you roll, you're going to count up the number of success symbols that you rolled, as usual, and you're going to regain that number of hit points, of course, not exceeding your maximum. So, that is how the 4 actions basically work. We're going to be doing 2 of those per character, alternating, and then the enemies are going to go. So, let's go ahead and get into choosing actions. So I do think that the dwarf is going to attack. So first, he may engage up to 2 enemies. Now, I don't think I actually want to have more than 2 enemies engage with me at a time because of these black dice you need to roll, 1 per enemy in front of you. So I think I'm just going to engage 1 person, and it is going to be the Knight Goblin Archer. So he has 3 hit points and then 3 attack. Now, you may notice that his card is red, where the Goblin Bats is white. That's because this is an elite monster. So, you have normal monsters, and then you have elite monsters. Elite monsters are just like the normal monsters, but they just have slightly better stats. So, the elite Knight Goblin Archer has better stats than the normal Knight Goblin Archer, but they are the same, and they function very similarly, as you will see. Alright, so now, I have engaged my 2 enemies, and now I can attack. I have 2 white dice, as that says, and then 2 black dice. So now I can target up to 2 enemies, so I'll target these 2 enemies, and then I will roll these dice. Alright, so we got 2 successes and then 2 shields, which is good. Then they got 2 of these nemesis sides. So that means we have to resolve this action right here. So it says to distribute 2 wounds amongst the party. So our Iron Breaker has 26 health, and the Bright Wizard has 22, so the Iron Guard will take the 2 damage. Going down to 24. Now you may notice 2 things happening here. First, I rolled 2 shields, and yet I've still dealt the 2 damage. That's because these shields only work when you are actually attacked by a scratch symbol, so it does not work for this, unfortunately, or some ability. That's because that these shields only work for damage, and distributing wounds does not actually count as being dealt damage for the shields to go off, unfortunately. Second, we have 2 of these symbols here, and yet I only did that once. That's because no matter how many of these symbols you roll, you only do the ability once. So I can actually ignore the other one there. And then we have 2 successes, and so I can take 2 damage tokens and put them on these characters. Or sorry, these enemies. So this guy has 3, and then this guy has 1. So I'll put 1 here, and then the other one here. And so then the giant bat is defeated and discarded. Then, final thing we do is we are going to exhaust this action, turning it 90 degrees sideways. Now, I cannot use this on my future activations until I use this action right here, which is my aid action. And this action is slightly weaker. You only roll 1 die for your aid action instead of the normal 2 per action. But you have this symbol right here, which means that you can ready all of your exhausted cards, including this card. So when I do this, all of my cards that are exhausted become readied. And for the Bright Wizard, that card is the Explore action. So, now we're going to go on to the Bright Wizard, and I think that I would like to attack. I think I want to use this Fireball attack, and this one allows you to engage one enemy, and then I can do a range attack of 2 dice. For this action, you may suffer 1 damage to target an additional enemy. So, let's see. I will not engage anyone, and then I will deal myself 1 damage to target 2 people instead of 1. So, I'm going to target this person here, and then this guy right here. So, when we target this guy, we reveal him. So, it's a gigantic spider. And so that's going to be here, but now we know what he is. And then we'll roll these 2. Now, we don't actually need to roll any of these because no one is engaged with this character, which is good. Alright, so we got 3 successes, which is good. So we can take these 3 tokens and distribute them however we like. If you put 2 here, this guy dies. If we put all 3 on this one, then this character dies. And the thing is, this guy has 1 attack, and then this guy has 3. So I am going to try to take out the goblin and then put 1 on the gigantic spider. So the goblin is defeated. I forgot to mention, this is a range attack, which is why that was legal. With a normal attack, it is said to be a melee attack, such as this dwarf right here, so you can only attack people in front of you, engaged with you. Now, if it is a ranged attack, then you may target people in the shadows and engage with other players. So that is one nice thing about her. So now this card is exhausted, and that's over with. Alright, so now we're going back over to the dwarf, and I am going to explore. So I explore for 2 white dice, and there's no people in front of me, so that's fine. And we rolled 3 successes, so that's going to take 3 of these tokens, and we're going to put that on there. Again, 3 out of 7. Then, draw 1 dungeon card. Either resolve that card or exhaust an action to put it on the bottom of the dungeon deck. Alright. So, we have Ill Fortune. Reynolds' lucky coin has 2 faces. They say, today your luck is bad. Either discard 2 success tokens or suffer 2 damage. Now, I do not have any success tokens on my cards from the Bright Wizard's aid action, so I can't do that, so I have to suffer 2 damage, unfortunately. But actually, before I do that, I can exhaust one of my other cards to put this on the bottom of the dungeon deck because of the dwarf's special ability here. So, you know what? I'm going to do that. I'm going to exhaust this rest action here, and then put this at the bottom of the deck. Now, one thing you do need to pay attention to is that you may not exhaust a card that has this symbol on it to do a special ability from another card. Like, nothing can exhaust this card. This card will never be exhausted, because if this card ever becomes exhausted, then you're really in a bad position, because then you can't use this ability to ready all your cards. So this card, it's impossible for this card to be exhausted. And so if all these cards were exhausted, and then I had drawn that card, I would not be able to exhaust this card to be able to evade that bad event. So that is how that works. So now we're going to go on to the Bright Wizard's second activation, and I'm going to use Burning Sight in Explore action. So I'm going to roll this 1 die, because it only has 1 there, so there we go. It is a 1 success and 1 shield. So that is going to place 1 success token on the location. Then I'm going to draw and resolve 1 dungeon card. Alright. Bloodlust of Corn. You find an altar beneath a twisted skull rune. A small bowl and stone knife rests upon it. An inscription reads, Blood for the Blood God. You may become bleeding to claim 2 success tokens. Alright, so what's bleeding? Well, bleeding is one of the statuses in the game, which says After your activation, suffer 1 damage. After another hero aids you, discard this card. Well, if you look here, the only card that is not exhausted for the Ironbreaker is the aid action, so I'm going to have to aid on my next turn, so taking this card would not actually be that bad. So I'll do that, take that, and I get 2 success tokens, which can go anywhere, and I will put them both on my Explore action. But then we also have, you may suffer up to 2 damage. You claim 1 success token for each damage suffered, and then you ready all of your actions. So, alright, well I can, let's do it. Now, as you might have noticed, this character is all about dealing damage to yourself to gain really powerful effects, such as targeting a second enemy or gaining these 2 tokens here, which I'm putting on my Fireball. And yeah, that's how this character works. This character is just kind of about having cards that are slightly better than usual. They're not all that exciting, maybe, but they are good. They're effective. Alright, so at the end of my activation, I suffer 1 damage. Okay, so now we've done all the hero actions, and so now we're going to go on to the enemy activations. So, starting with the first player, each player is going to activate a hero, each hero, starting with the player who has this token here, is going to activate 1 enemy. First, you must activate enemies in front of you, and then if you cannot, because you don't have any, like neither of these characters do, you can activate people in the shadows. So, the Ironbreaker is going to activate this face-down enemy. So, we'll flip it over, and it is an Orc Boy. Now, the Orc Boy has a tier of 2, so he's a little bit more powerful than many of the other enemies. He has an attack of 2, and then 2 health. Now, he actually has some armor there, which is that little symbol. What that means is that the first damage you deal to him, each attack does nothing. So, to actually kill him, I need to deal 3 damage to him in 1 hit. Or I can split it up and deal 4 damage total, 2 damage each time. But the first hit is always negated. Then, let's see how enemies actually activate. Well, they have this activation bar right here, and this is what is going to happen on their turn. This guy is just going to advance on his turn, which means that if he is in the shadows, he's going to come up to the player who activated him. So, he's just going to move engaged with him, and he has an ability here that's saying this enemy can exhaust only after it activates. So, there's certain cards that allow you to exhaust enemies, but this guy is immune to them. Now that he has acted, he's just going to exhaust himself, and then the Bright Wizard is going to activate the Gigantic Spider, and the Gigantic Spider has 3 different activations here, different actions. So first it has Inflict, which means that it is going to deal 1 damage to the Bright Wizard. If its attack was 2, then it would do 2 damage. But that's just how that works. It's just like an attack. Then you have Ensnare, which says, Ensnare, if this enemy is in the shadows, exhaust 1 action. So we have to exhaust 1 action, and I will exhaust the aid action here. Then it is going to retreat, which means that if it is engaged with the player, it's going to go into the shadows. So it's exhausted there, and now everyone's exhausted, so we're going to ready everyone for next turn. Alright, then it is the location phase. If we had 3 more progress tokens on the location, we would be able to explore to the next location and move on. And if we did that, all enemies in the shadows would be discarded. Any enemy that is engaged with us follows us to the next location. So you kind of want to defeat the enemies before moving on to the next location. We do not have enough progress tokens, so we're going to have to stay here. And then it says at the end of the location phase, the party leader exhausts 1 action. So we are going to have to exhaust 1 action. The thing is, the party leader can't exhaust this action, as I've already discussed. It's impossible to exhaust this action, so we actually don't have to exhaust the action, which is good. So we get away from that bad ability. Then, second to last thing we do is advance the peril track here. As you can see, there's this track here, and once you get to one of the colored spaces, then you activate the ability that corresponds with it. So that is kind of a little timer, and when it gets down to the red action, it is really bad for us. So you want to do it kind of quickly. Final thing that happens is we're going to take this token and give it to the next character. And then we start a new round. So let's get to it. Alright, so I actually did not think that quite through. I forgot that this character was going to start, so it's going to take one more damage before it can be aided. Unfortunately, that. But let's go and do a fireball. So we can engage one enemy if we so desire, and I'm not going to. Then I can do a ranged attack for 2. Before this attack, I can pay 1 health to attack additional target. You know what? Okay, so let's see. Is it likely for me to be able to actually hit 2 people and deal significant damage? You know what? It is. So I'm going to pay 1 health, suffer 1 damage, and then I'm going to spend both of these tokens to get 2 extra successes. Alright, roll that, and there we go. So that's not as great as I was expecting, but it's still fine. We have 1 success. We will be able to deal 3 damage to this guy. The first damage is negated, but he is still defeated. The orc boy is no more. Alright, and then we suffer 1 damage because of bleeding. Alright, now the Ironbreaker is going to go, and it's going to aid. So we're going to roll 1 die, and 1 token gets to be placed on any of this character's cards here. So I'll put 1 on the attack action. Then, before this action, you may engage 1 enemy engaged with the target hero. There are no enemies engaged with this hero. I should have read that first, though. The target hero may ready 1 action. Okay, so there's only... Okay, so we can do attack or aid. I will ready the... I'll ready the aid action. Then I can ready all of my actions. And then finally, this card is discarded. Alright, now we're back over to the Bright Wizard. I'm going to use Burning Sight to explore, using both of these tokens, making sure I can do it, and I rolled 2 successes. So that's a little bit of overkill, but we got the 7 we need. Alright, we can draw and resolve 1 dungeon card, or we have to. Ritual Candles. So the last 2 cards we drew when we explored were events. This is an item, which means it's going to go in front of us and we can use it. They're usually one-time use abilities that are kind of helpful. You may discard this card after Hero's activation to add 1 progress to the location. Oh, it's kind of a nice little bonus. And then it has this little coin here. Now, what that means is that we have a choice. Either we can draw the top card of this gear deck, or we can take a card from the discard pile. Now, there's nothing in the discard pile at the beginning of the game, so we'll just draw the top card. And it is a longsword. So it is a melee weapon. At the beginning of the campaign, you can only have 1 of these items at most equipped, but as you progress, you'll be able to get more item slots that you'll be able to put in, and then you will be restricted to having 2 weapons, 1 helm, and then 1 piece of armor. So that's not going to matter right now. Right now the limit is just 1, but later it'll be increased. And it says before your attack action, you may target 1 additional enemy. This enemy must be in your engagement zone. Okay, so that's actually really nice. So we will be able to target 1 person engaged with us at all times. We could actually target 3 people, possibly, if we pay the 1 health. I kind of would prefer the Ironbreaker to get that sword, but oh well. It's better that at least someone has it. And then, for the final action of the hero phase, the Ironbreaker is going to attack. So he's going to engage this gigantic spider, and then he's going to roll 2 hero dice and 1 enemy die. Alright, that is a success, and then a roll. Alright, so that's 3 successes, 1 shield, and nothing for the enemy, so this guy is gone. Alright, so that was a pretty good turn. Alright, so now this guy's going to exhaust, and we are all done with the heroes. And then we'll move on to the enemies. Now, there's no enemies, so that's great. Then we can go on to the locations, and we will explore, because we'll have 7 tokens on there. So that's discarded. So now we can go on to the next location, which is the Confounding Stairs. So this is Tier 1. All the locations are going to be Tier 1. 6 progress tokens, 2 engaged, and then 2 in the shadows, 2 for monsters. At the end of the location phase, discard 1 progress from this location. Oh wow, that is not good. It says, a chamber with many exits, some going up, some going down. Choosing the correct path will be difficult. Yes, it will be, because that power is going to be very annoying. But oh well. So for enemies, we start with the first player, and we have a giant bat, and then goblin warrior, and then 2 in the shadows face down, and then this is going to go up by 1. And now let's read this. A grinning goblin steps into view. This is Grump's place. He waves a nasty, filth-smeared dagger at you. Zog off, or I's gonna shank you with me shank. That's a odd accent. I'm not sure why he has that, but whatever. Spawn Odysseus Grump. He's gonna spawn with the first player, and he's tough. 2 attack, 6 health, 1 armor, and he's going to inflict and then pray, which means this enemy engages the hero with the most damage. So that's not great. But if we remember this ability here, every time we defeat him, he's going to go back to his lair over here out of play, and we get 4 progress tokens for doing that. So that is good. But that is where I am going to stop this session. I'm going to pick it up next time, and I hope you guys will join me. But in the meantime, I hope you all have a great day, and happy gaming.